but there's a host of letters in the archives, and when I say archives, what I mean by that is last summer, Meredith M. Kline and his brothers graciously donated 60 boxes of archival material to the OPC archives, the papers and letters of Klein, of his father. And this is what's got me energized to do the biography. It's going to write itself with this rich treasure trove of papers and letters. But there are a lot of letters between the two of them, and they're quite intimate. Even to the point where Grace Kline or Rena Van Til would append a little note to each other at the end of Meredith and Cornelius's letters. So the families were quite close. And Kline kind of let his hair down and was really honest with Van Til about many things, even his growing apprehension of the covenant formulations of John Murray. And there are a couple of letters where I can see Van Til nodding his head in agreement with Kline about this sort of thing. And here's another way in which Kline's precisionism, his driving to get a coherent architectonic consistency in a subject is you see an escalating frustration with Murray. He has a couple of footnotes in By Oath Consigned, where he very respectfully demurs from Murray. Decades later, if you read especially the article Law Until Gospel, I think it's called, he's pretty explicit about Murray has unleashed a revisionist movement on covenant theology that is bearing dangerous consequences. And dangerous consequences for him was code for Norman Shepherd and theonomy.
I was going to ask that because that's going on in the background of the later background, right? As you have the Norman Shepherd issue at Westminster.
And when you go to Van Til, the theonomists claim Van Til. Shepherd claimed Van Til as a supporter. Van Til, very, very late in life, when he wasn't fully on top of the nature of the controversy, said some things in defense of Shepherd. But when you read the letters of Kline, you sense that Van Til, leaning on his own appreciation of Gerhardus Voss, was seeing the redemptive historical distinctions that Kline was bringing out that prompted him to take issue with Murray and Shepherd and theonomy.
And the topic, for those who aren't familiar with the Norman Shepherd issue, and in a way, an extension, the John Murray versus Kline issue. They're different issues, but they have implications, right? They have overlapping implications. But for Shepherd, particularly, the question is, what's the role of works or merit in salvation properly, vis-a-vis faith, and particularly in the area of justification. So, and Kline, of course, holding to a very strong faith alone conception of justification versus Norm Shepherd, who, at least perhaps in class or elsewhere, this is where, of course, the debate is, is introducing faith and works as an idea, sort of undergirding justification. This is a very simplistic explanation of it.
Right. And I want to make clear that Kline would see differences between Murray and Shepherd.
Right.
Murray rejected the idea of the covenant of works, that language. But he basically had a bicovenantal structure. He called it the Adamic administration. But he would actually in some of his writings, eschew any notion of covenant going on with Adam, with what we call the covenant of works. But Klein, while Klein would not accuse Murray of holding the views that Shepherd would eventually articulate, he did say that Murray was sort of the gateway for Shepherd,
right,
to get there.
Yeah, the fear he had was not just Murray per se, but someone like Daniel Fuller,
Exactly.
whose theology it sounded like Murray, and if you weren't careful with your distinctions and definitions, you could easily see how Daniel Fuller's covenant theology and John Murray's covenant theology could sound the same. And Daniel Fuller did believe that Adam was in a covenant relationship pre-fall, and that covenant was a covenant of grace.
Right.
And that's where Dr. Klein said, this is now orthodoxy is at stake, the gospel's at stake. You can't do that. And so John Murray again, he never said that. You're totally right, John. And I think that's an important distinction to remember, that John Murray taught that that the Lord's relations with Adam was not a covenant, but it was still a works arrangement, works principle,
right?
That type of idea. So he never held to the idea that Adam was that the Lord worked with Adam in a grace principle. And there's where the similarity, they sound similar, but the distinction there for him was important. But as soon as you start talking about grace pre-fall, and Dr. Klein had a very particular way he defined grace, but as soon as you start talking about grace pre-fall, you have now undermined the gospel. And he was very zealous about this.
Grace being defined as unmerited favor, right?
Demerited favor, I think, is the way Dr. Klein would define it. He would define grace as you have received the covenant blessings in spite of your forfeiture of it. You deserve wrath, but you get kingdom blessings nonetheless.
Yeah.
And to put it simply, if you mix works and grace in the Adamic covenant, you're going to mix it in the new covenant
with Christ, right? That's
right.
The problem. If whatever you say about the first Adam, you have to say about Christ as the second Adam. And if you have Christ in a grace arrangement, you have no grounds now for justification. There is no alien righteousness that he merited that can be imputed now. And so and that's why he stood so staunchly on this point. And interesting. I would love to read these letters, John. I'll tell you, it fills in a lot of gaps of how you had a sympathetic Kline towards Murray by oath consigned, which is true. He actually appreciates Murray, but respectfully disagrees. To later Kline, where he's a little bit more aggressive, and to see that development, what happened.
Well, is that probably Norm Shepherd? I mean, that he sees Norm Shepherd as an activation of this problem.
It's also a theonomy. He called it the tragedy of Chalcedon, as Rushdoony called his operation. This was a tragic. This was the old new error, as he called it in that review of Greg Bonson, mixing up, flattening the distinctions between the Mosaic covenant and the new covenant.